The following content is for entertainment purposes only. The voices used have been artificially generated and do not reflect the beliefs or opinions of the individuals depicted or creator of the video. The viewer discretion is advised.
Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., what in the absolute hell do you have us reading?
What's the problem, Don?
Oh, you're my boy and everything. We go way back, but even I can't defend you on this one.
I'm still not seeing a problem here.
No problem. How do you not see a problem with Wet Hot Allosaurus Summer?
Yeah, when you suggested we make a YouTube channel where we read to the audience, this wasn't what we had in mind.
Come on, guys. The audience is going to love this. Look, the front cover even says hot dinosaur action, the way you like it. And you bet your bottom dollar old Joe loves him some action.
Jesus Christ.
Trust me, fellas. I got a good feeling about this one.
Donald, we're here already, so we might as well roll with the punches. Like we discussed off camera, each video will be one chapter long, and we'll rotate with each chapter. I guess we'll let Joe handle the first one.
You two better be thankful we're homies or would have been on site. Believe that.
Whatever, Dorito tits. All right, beautiful people, it's time to dive into the vibrant tale of Wet Hot Allosaurus Summer by Lola Faust. Chapter 1. Tanis climbed onto the biggest barn to watch the dinosaurs. Her whole body hurt from a grueling day of ranching. There was dirt under her chipped nails and a big brown stain on her blue jeans from where she'd fallen in the mud while milking Dusty,
nice
her favorite heifer. Suck my nuts, Donald. In the fields, the cows mooed contentedly, chewing clover. The evening was thick with pollen and the warm buzz of bees and chirping crickets. Tana's body was tight and lean from 18 years working alongside her father.
Of course she's barely legal. Not mad at that.
Donald, seriously? Don't you have grandkids older than that?
If she's old enough to vote, she can get the stroke, I'm just saying.
Good Lord.
Had she grown up in the city around men who were not her family, she might have known she was beautiful. She'd inherited her mother's generous breasts and backside.
Generous backside, you say? Now you have my attention.
Really, Barack? Coming at me about her age and you're over here simping over some rusty, dusty farm cheeks.
What can I say, Donnie? I'm all about that bass.
But hard labor had crystallized her curves, made them more severe and striking. Though Tanis knew nothing of her own beauty, she knew the beauty of the dinosaurs, whom she watched every night without fail. Astonishing, the news had proclaimed so many decades earlier that they should live among us, recreated out of DNA collected from rocks. It was an existential shift to think that such a thing was possible. And yet, the first generation lived as zoo animals. It was seen now as a moral stain on the foundation of human existence they hadn't known. But perhaps that is no excuse. The creatures might have remained sideshow attractions, but a biologist at the Chicago Center for Paleolithic Genetic Research noticed the way Albertosaurus and Allosaurus would work in groups just to systematically smash rocks. Tools, he had cried, they used tools. While multinational conglomerates funded a bull dinosaurs to work experiment, it succeeded beyond their imagining. And thus, like so many other species, dinosaurs were at last belatedly domesticated, or so they thought, and integrated into the workforce of man. They proved especially good at raw material extraction. They thrived when introduced into the tar sands, iridescent beasts growing warm and strong by the rainbow slick pools of crude. They were primordial beasts drawn always back to the slick and pumping heart of the earth.
Want to try that again, Joey?
Nope. Tanis had grown up on these histories and they seemed like mist to her. She couldn't imagine a time before dinosaurs were everywhere, a time when people protested by bombing research centers.
Bomb down there, black dynamite?
It seemed to her as stupid as shooting at cows. Her family lived in the foothills on some of the last remaining farmland in Alberta. From the roof of the biggest barn, she could watch the extraction, see the bodies of the pterodactyls as perfectly engineered as airplanes, but of warm flesh.
I really hate the way that
sounds.
During
the day, the hordes of tyrannosaurs and smaller carnivores were visible. Sometimes a raptor would scamper through their fields, scaring the cows. She sketched them in secret sometimes, their long necks, blues and greens. Learning how to draw their feathers was hard at first, but eventually became her favorite part. She loved how the scales and feathers worked together for heat maintenance and protection. When her father found her sketchbook, he slapped her across the face.
Oh, shit.
Hey, yikes. Not cool, man.
Tanis was just trying to draw some dinosaurs. She didn't deserve all that.
For real. Hashtag justice for Tanis.
Those ugly lizards are going to dig our graves, he growled. Tanis learned to keep the sketchbook under her pillow when she slept and carried it in her knapsack across the farm during the day. Each night she dreamed she'd wake up as a giant and beautiful dinosaur and that she would flee her small life as a farm girl. The sun pulled the shadows of trees and oil rigs along across the fields. Tanis closed the sketchbook and set it on the shingles. A clover-sweet breeze tugged strands of honey hair out of her ponytail. She pulled her flannel across her chest. Her nipples prickled with the evening coldness.
Now we're talking.
In this light, the dinosaurs were perfect. They shone deep amber and crimson. That color made her heart rush. Every day they seemed closer. The farmland was shrinking, it's true, but it was more than that. She felt like she could throw a stone and hit one. She dug in the gutters of the barn and grasped a flat rock. The stone arced through the clean air and landed a few feet from the barn, nowhere near the working dinosaurs.
Why would
she threw another so hard she thought her shoulder might pop out of its socket. She threw another and another until the gutters by her feet were empty and her arm hurt.
Again, what's the
purpose? At last it was dark and Tanis felt cold and alone. Her body knew the barn, every foothold, a loose corner of siding, and she slid quickly down its face. The first thing she noticed when she landed was an unusual smell. A musky, earthy smell, she thought, but mixed with flowers and not unpleasant. Perhaps her mother was experimenting for dinner.
I'm sorry, but I have to say something.
Shocker.
How the hell is something that smells like musky flowers not unpleasant? And she thinks her mother is cooking that shit? The hell do they eat up there in Canada where that's her first thought?
Damn, I thought this was about to be another nonsensical rant, but you low-key spitting. Also, what was her mother doing when Farmer Dickface smacked the living daylights out of Tanis?
There are so many questions.
Tanis heard a hiss and watched her cat Misty, a gray Persian, scatter into a hole in the barn. Then she saw the leg. It took Tanis a second to realize what she was looking at. The dark iridescent feathers shone in so many colors she would never be able to render them, even if she spent her whole life drawing them. She followed the tree's thick leg up to its strong hips, wide chest, and finally the glorious saurian head, 8 feet above the barn floor. The word came unbidden into her mind. Allosaurus. She whispered it so softly she could barely hear herself. His eyes were the deep green of ocean she had only imagined in her dreams. His cheekbones looked carved from prehistoric cliffs. His feathered dew was coiffed in a sexy and hip honky-tonk curl. He let out a low, deep roar like a tractor coming on after a long winter.
Gross, man.
His body reminded her of a living lake, the way one move would ripple across his feathers. He reached out. She saw his communication device, the wires wound into his claw. After some violent misunderstandings, all infant dinosaurs were now hardwired with a bioelectric communication device that allowed them to speak telepathically with their human foreman.
Hold on, I'm interested.
She knew with one touch she would be able to see into his mind, and he would be able to see into hers.
Well, that's kind of nuts.
She backed away, fearful of. Of what? She should have felt instinctive terror at the giant predator's presence,
Oh,
but it wasn't
shit!
that at all. Was it something else? Was it fear of really communicating with him? Of knowing what he was thinking? Did he feel the same way?
Oh my
He
God.
stared into her with such a begging look. She let him touch her temple and felt the quick zing of their minds tuning into the same channel. I've watched you too, Tanis, his mind set into her mind. Then he backed away. He was shy too. He stared down at his claw feet. Language. Thoughts. He was no animal. This was a sentient creature who could speak to her. Want her, could he? Half afraid and half wanting, Tanis let him sniff her neck. His mouth parted and she saw his rows of razor teeth. His breath smelled hot and earthy, like a barbecue.
Whatever barbecue they're cooking, I want no parts of.
That's probably the only barbecue that you'd want no part of.
Hey, don't hate on your boy because I'm a connoisseur of meat.
Hey, yo.
Sounding a little sus there, Don?
Pause.
She couldn't distinguish fear from desire. Goosebumps prickled over every inch of her soft human skin. He touched her temple again with his talon, and she watched his fantasy like a movie projected into her skull. He didn't know whether to eat her or take her from behind and make her his mate.
What the fuck?
Here we go.
His tongue slid out of his mouth and brushed her behind the ear with unexpected softness.
I
The
can't.
feeling
Donald,
bloomed
buddy, it's
all
only
down
gonna
her
get worse.
spine. She felt a wetness between her legs, something she'd only experienced once or twice while horseback riding.
You.
It made her throb. He licked her again, this time harder, more ardently down her entire neck, tasting her fear and sweat. His tongue was as big as her whole hand. She imagined other places he could lick her with it. She reached down and gently stroked the feathers of his chest, muscled from labor. His skin was hard like a leather saddle, but
I
his
bet
feathers
that's not
felt
the
like
only thing
tulip
that's
petals,
hard.
Donald,
soft
please.
and slightly
Let me have
wet.
this, Barry.
She began exploring him with her hands. Tanis moved. She heard her father shout from behind her. She saw him short and stocky, a sickly human.
Got him.
With a pipe sticking out of the corner of his mouth, shotgun cocked.
Hold on, what the
No,
fuck?
she shouted.
Tanis,
and licked
move.
in front of the Allosaurus. The shot boomed through her eardrums and into her shoulder.
Are you shitting
It
me?
sent her flying through the air like a sack of flour.
Ain't no way.
That's kind of wild, not going to lie.
I'm not sure if YouTube will let us continue on with this, but I'm too invested to stop now.
That's the spirit, Barack. There's plenty more hot dinosaur action just waiting for ya.
With all due respect, Joey, shut the hell up.
She landed on a hay bale, coughing, wind knocked out of her. The magic of the encounter was gone. She felt cold and shattered, blood gushing from her shoulders, soaking her flannel shirt. The pain had not yet arrived, but she knew it would. The dinosaur hissed and wailed, lunging at her father. He was several times larger than man. She sensed his hot fury.
That's
He was
right,
upon him,
fuck
his
him up.
seconds teeth out. No, Tanis shouted. The
Damn
beast
it.
turned back, eyes narrowed at her. Though they were not connected by his telepathy device, Tanis could feel his thoughts. You would save him? Tanis nodded sadly. As much as she had hated her human life, she'd lived with her father for 18 years and felt some sympathy for him, his small life, and hatred. The dinosaur forgot her cowering father, returned to her. He lifted her in his talons with a remarkable tenderness and held her to him. She smelled the scent that had first identified him and it made her feel safe.
Still don't know about that one.
She held on tight as he ran with her, springing on quick lizard legs out of their barn and across their property. All of the stars in the sky swirled as they ran together as one creature. Behind them, her father and brothers had assembled, all with shotguns firing. But Tanis and her mate were sprinting too quickly. The gunshots came nowhere near the fleeing couple.
Haha, get
After
better
an
aim,
age
you
of running,
scrubs.
the blast
Are we
grew
not going to
quiet and
acknowledge how it
impotent.
referred to
She saw her
Tanis
brothers
and
and
the
father fade
Allosaurus as a
into
couple?
even tinier specks. He thought her heart would burst as she curled into the warm and welcoming shoulder of her new love.
Love.
The love she had observed unnoticed for so long. Was it shock or blood loss or just dawning realization? Her old life was over. Finally, all the senseless noise from her farm had disappeared. It was dark. The dinosaur stopped running and set her down in the field. The cold air rushed around her. Pain burned in her shoulder. He touched her forehead. "What do I call you?" she asked. "We don't really have names," he said, "but you can call me Big Al."
Big Al, are we serious right now?
Sounds like a real ladies' man.
It sounds more like a 1970s pimp from Cleveland.
I kind of like it.
No surprise there. Couldn't the author use a shred of creativity with the name?
Let's get back to it, gents. Things are starting to steam up just the way I like it.
Hey, you disgusting son of a...
She repeated the name out loud and telepathically. Big Al, it was so beautiful to her. So simple, she couldn't believe she was here in the field with a dinosaur, her dinosaur, Big Al.
Take a shot every time
He
she
rubbed
says
his
Big
muzzle
Al.
all over her body. Again, her skin perked up. She didn't know she could feel this way, like she was jumping into a freezing lake while being burned alive. Big Al popped her buttons easily with his talons. He tore off her pants like they were made of paper. Tanis had never been naked in front of a man before, never mind a man dinosaur.
I'm gonna hurl.
She tried covering herself with her uninjured arm, but he pinned it against the cold earth and, with one fluid motion, ran his tongue from her injured shoulder down to her hip. Tanis gasped. He slid his tongue back up her body with extreme tenderness, like a hot summer breeze.
I'm
With
never
the tip,
going outside
he drew
during the
circles
summer
on her
again.
neck,
Thank God, give
working
that
his way
tan a
from the
rest.
base of her ear to her collarbones. His every touch made her tingle. He traced her breasts, circling her nipples, which leaped up. They hardened with a pleasure that was almost painful. Big Al continued down her body, licking her belly and inner thighs. He kissed her ankles.
Yes, since nothing's hotter than some damn ankles.
With his strong jaw, he pushed apart her legs. Her thighs quivered. He licked her ardently like she was the most delicious thing in the entire world. Tanis felt her whole body melt. He grasped her butt with his talons, tasting her deeper and deeper.
Hold up.
What does your Cheeto-looking ass want now?
Big Owl just casually admitted to eating ass and you just want to sweep it under the rug.
And what's the problem, Donald?
What's the problem? You're kidding, right?
I'm actually going to have to side with Joe on this one. As an ass man myself, I can proudly say I dabble in a little chocolate starfish from time to time. You can't just go and yuck somebody's yum, Donnie.
Pleasure moved through her waves, rippling. With his tail, he grabbed her around the waist and lifted her up so that she was face to face with him. He held her to his chest. She could feel his warmth and his power, his love emanating. He lowered her onto his sex.
Onto his what?
She felt
Tanis is
his
getting some
massive rubbing
prehistoric
against her
penis.
own warm wetness. He slid her up and down along it, wetting himself. Then he entered her.
Call me when it's
His
done.
talons dug into her shoulders, forcing her down to accept all of him inside of her. She felt like she was going to be torn apart from his size and also from the intensity of her own pleasure. He pushed deeper.
This is actually insane.
Everything about him was too much. Tanis could barely breathe. She saw colors, the bright reds and ambers of dinosaurs flying at twilight. There were stars behind them, burning hot, swirling her eyelids. Pain gave way to pleasure. She cried quietly at first and then louder, letting out big wet wails timed to his every movement. He was churning her insides into a soft, satisfying butter.
Oh, why?
Let it all out, Donnie.
Hold on, let me get my popcorn first.
Not only did I not want to imagine this god-awful series of events, but thanks to Joseph here, I have a vivid scene playing out in my head, and the only way it's leaving is with Tanis' dad's blicky.
Relax, man. Knowing you, you've probably watched way worse on the hub.
But reading and watching are two different things. I feel like I have to spend the next month in church just doused in holy water and communion wine just to wash this sin away.
You done bitching, Donald? Can I finally finish the chapter?
Whatever.
She gripped his scales with her heels and began riding him hard, cantering the way she had through fields her entire life. Her body knew what to do. Instinct took over. Big Al moaned. He wrapped his mouth around her injured shoulder, lapping at her blood as he thrust.
Come on, man.
Tanis became
please
lightheaded
just
with
ride it
pleasure
out.
and blood loss.
Praising Barry.
Big red tingling flowers
Yikes,
bloomed
pause.
through her entire body. She saw stars again, whole galaxies in his iridescent feathers. She lost track of her orgasms. Where one began and another ended, it became an endless chain. Could she die, she wanted to know, from too much pleasure? She hadn't believed it was possible. Then when she thought it would never end, that they would stay like this forever with one final explosive thrust, she felt his love go off like a rocket inside of her,
Don,
filling her
hush.
completely. It was over. Big Al lay down in the field. She climbed up onto his chest and heard the deep pump of his heart, the braying of his breath. She knew she would love him for the rest of her life. He touched her temple again. "I'm so hungry," he communicated. And his thoughts stuttered, hesitant. "Go on," Tanis whispered, "you can trust me. I love the taste of your blood." His eyes went shy as he said that. She felt his vulnerability. She lifted herself up to a seated position and looked down at her body, at the wound her father had inflicted on her shoulder. Her arm dangled dead and gray. There wasn't any use trying to save it. She knew what to do. She offered her injured arm to his hunger and felt the hot pain of his love as he devoured the whole thing.